Vous avez un téléphone à touche, composez le 1.
Where are you calling from, sir?
I was got about 500 oxygen actually.
Lift off.
The lessons from those who have survived and prospered in major revolutionary change, in major changes, are very clear. They've had a total vision of where it is that their organization is going in the context of some overall explanation of the world.
Change has always been a feature of civilization. We've had wars, famine, plagues, and so forth. People often say that change is a constant, but the way change really happens is things bubble along for a while, they're kind of simmering, and then all of a sudden you get a discontinuous change. In the last 10 years or so, markets have started to fragment into many, many niches. So that in 1980, for example, you could go into A&P and buy a pound of coffee. Now there's no such thing as coffee. There's Swiss Amaretto, decaf, all different kinds of coffees rather than just plain coffee. So today, whether you buy a Walkman, a telephone, financial services, we are presented with a plethora of selection. In this environment, the mass production system is very ineffective in dealing with variety because it's designed to eliminate variety by making things the same way. So that as soon as you have to produce 200 kinds of telephones or 30 kinds of soft drinks, mass production begins to collapse.
Companies all over the world are facing the same dilemma. Essentially, they're all using the same technologies in one form or another. They're all going through the same pain of readjustment.
In recessions in the past, it's been the weaker companies that have suffered. And so every 10 years or so, you'd have a recession and it would clean out some of the weaker companies, and the strongest would survive. What's different in the 1990s is we're seeing the General Motors, the Kodaks, the IBMs, the giants of the industry, in trouble. This is a first. The reason they're in trouble is because the very things that made them successful are the liabilities in the new age. In other words, their power to produce mass-produced goods on large scale is now a disadvantage when you look at the fragmentation of their marketplaces.
It's easy to assume that all these household names are in trouble, that somehow their managements have been asleep at the wheel. In fact, that isn't the case. What they've been facing is an epochal change, a once in 200 years change in how they go about doing business. Such a change is, by definition, outside the experience of anyone in management today.
The challenge for business today is to achieve variety at low cost. This might seem to be an oxymoron. How do you customize at the same time have the advantage of mass production? The concept of producing customized goods at low cost is called batch of one. That's the ability to customize to an individual customer at mass production prices. Another term is mass customization.
Mass customization exists as a technology, be it custom bicycles produced in an hour and 40 minutes, be it a service like book publishing, be it a service like in insurance, be it yogurt, be it a whole range of different products and services. All of these things have certain characteristics in common. They usually involve greater flexibility, faster response time, usually lower capital investment.
There's a Japanese bicycle company that makes the high-end bicycles, the type you could lift with your little finger that cost $5,000, the racing bikes. Now, in the old days, if you bought an expensive racing bike, you'd try to find Giuseppe in Italy to manufacture one. Now, Giuseppe doesn't make bikes for just anybody, so you have to have a letter of introduction for Giuseppe to make the bike for you. And if you're lucky, in 6 months, you get it. What they've done in Japan is have a system whereby you go into the store and you sit on an exercise bike, and they move it around to fit your body and adjust it. And when it's just right, they push a button, and it locks in the coordinates of your frame. And at the same time, it sends the order directly to the factory, and they start manufacturing your bicycle within 5 minutes. Now, it takes about an hour and 45 minutes to manufacture a bicycle, so in about 2 hours, your bike is ready. Now, this is not a bike where it's adjusted with little screws to fit your body. This is welded to your frame. However, as a customer, if you've just paid $5,000 for a custom-made bicycle, you won't believe it didn't come out of inventory. So they wait 2 weeks and ship it.
You cannot produce a product which has to be there or a service which has to be delivered instantly when you require 5 levels of signature.
The engineers and technical people in business are way ahead of management by about 10 years. And the problem is management has to catch up. As technologies get highly flexible and adaptive, management still has brittle processes in their placing of orders, in their human resource practices, in their accounting systems, and so forth.
Technologies and management systems used to exploit them are inextricably intertwined. Today we have the technologies which are able to produce in a flexible fashion individual products for individual people at mass production prices. We have overlain on top of those technologies management systems for a standardized world. If we're going to properly exploit the new technology with its latent potential, we're going to have to reinvent the whole management system.
In mass production, the overriding management principle is management by exception, which is to say we standardize everything, and only if a little flag goes up, we run over and fix it and get it back under control. So in this environment, that's fine as long as things stay steady enough. But as soon as you get into an environment where markets are very fragmented and every product or service is different, you run into the situation where everything is an exception. And when everything is an exception, we discover in management that the bottleneck is at the top of the bottle. And people refer up to their bosses, say, well, boss, we don't have a standard solution for this one. What do I do now? And it gets referred up. Organizations then become very clogged, traumatized, and in the worst cases, stop functioning altogether.
What is going to happen, though, as the pressure of fragmenting markets comes back onto those large organizations, is that their own internal structure is going to have to break down.
What we have to do now is reinvent management, reinvent finance, reinvent operations, reinvent marketing, sales, human resources, and so forth. As we've watched organizations adapt and evolve in the last few years, the 80s and the early 90s was the era of downsizing. So if you can imagine a pyramid and someone taking bites out of it. So you have something that looks like a pawn. So people have surgically removed staff headquarters people and so forth from organizations. Now they haven't changed the amount of work that has to be done in the organization. So nobody's saying because you have a third less people, you can do a third less work. Secondly, nobody's changed the manufacturing processes. Nobody's changed the human resource processes, the accounting processes. They fundamentally have been left intact. They've just surgically removed parts of organizations. Now, sometimes this actually cripples an organization. In the early 80s, Chrysler cut out its ability to design a car and had to later get together with the Japanese to design products for the market. That's like going on a rapid weight loss diet and saying, I'm going to cut off my right leg, and hobbling along and saying, see, Mom, look at all the weight I lost. So you have a lot of organizations hobbling along that are fundamentally crippled by the downsizing exercises they've gone through. What we need to do is reinvent work in a new paradigm. So the essential change that's happening is we're moving from the pyramid, or even the bitten out pyramid, to something that looks much more like a molecule or an organism. You could draw your own picture of it, but it looks much more like a molecular structure.
Given that overall picture, adopting innovations as and when you can makes absolute sense.
The new organization will be built around markets, not products or functions. So you'll see the organization form like molecules around certain markets, and operations, sales, marketing, accounting, finance will be wrapped around those markets. It's interesting that the pyramid shape is that form of shape that has the least surface contact with its environment for the most volume. So, for example, you find people in large corporations who are 7 layers removed from the customer. They've never seen a customer. They wouldn't recognize a customer if they tripped over one. In the new molecular organization, you'll either be serving a customer or you'll be serving someone who does. So there'll be very few levels of management. They'll be very fast, responsive, very few hierarchical levels. The glue that'll hold the new organization together will be very strong shared values, as opposed to the command and control system of the pyramid. In the new systems, we are going to have to push decision-making down in a way that people are very responsive and have ownership over the issues that they manage, so that they can respond and do what it takes. Senior management shouldn't be flying into a local site to see how they're producing the product or service. Senior management should be worrying about strategic issues like, should we move into Eastern Europe? Should we be introducing a new product? Big strategic issues.
Of all the banners that managements have attempted to introduce change under in the last 10 years, probably the most fertile has been the banner of quality. And there are good reasons for that. The whole shift from after-the-fact control to real-time assurance in our thinking about management systems, our whole idea about having to empower people, all of those kinds of ideas are also central to the basic concepts of mass customization.
So we move away from an engineering view of quality based on defects to a market-driven view of quality based on the values of each individual customer. This is a very different world.
We are familiar with the concept that the Japanese have somehow developed large quantities of the management systems and management approaches that are applicable to this new world. But there is no guarantee that just because they invented them, that those approaches are restricted to Japan. They're open to everyone. In American industry, there's this terrible sense of fin de siècle that somehow our genius for production of goods and services is dying away. This is terribly wrong. Essentially, North America is incredibly productive. Not only that, it has probably the most flexible society on earth. Mass customization, the process of producing and taking information and goods and services down to individuals, is not made in America, it's made for America. It is, as a society, probably the one in the world that can really make this thing happen. The question for anyone in management today, or to be more accurate, leadership, is really Are you going to treat this as a matter of survival or as the most incredible opportunity?
Pogo the cartoon character once said, "We've met the enemy and he is us." The challenge to each of us is to reinvent our businesses to wrap around the customer and the marketplace as opposed to products and services. At the end of the day, he who knows the customer best has no competition.